What's going on to all my movie fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with a brand new movie review, and today we'll be breaking down the new Paul Thomas Anderson coming-of-age comedy drama by the name of Licorice Pizza, a film that had a limited release on November 26th, but will be available for everyone to check out in theaters on December 25th. Now, I got the opportunity to check it out early, and I'm really excited to let you all know what I thought about it and let you know if it's worth checking out in this spoiler-free review. Before we break it all down, do me a favor and check me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this spoiler-free review, well, make sure to like and share the review. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate the support. And in the comment section for all my PTA fans out there, let me know if this is a film you're excited for, but more importantly, once you've seen it, what did you think? Let's talk all pros, cons, your thoughts on the direction, the story, the cinematography, the performances, the chemistry of our two leads. What was your favorite cameo? And let's talk about your criticisms. Were you disappointed by this film? Were you offended by the film? And since we're talking Paul Thomas Anderson, what's your favorite movie of his? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. So kicking this thing off with my positives, starting off with the director and the writer of this film himself, PTA, who I'm a fan of. Now, I don't normally revisit a lot of his films. I almost put him in the same clout as I do with Wes Anderson. Very auteur, very, fans of those directors, but I don't always rewatch their films, except for I've seen Boogie Nights quite a few times and Punk Drunk Love, but There Will Be Blood, Magnolia, Inherent Vice, and films like that. I don't always Phantom Thread, which I don't plan on watching again. Again, films I enjoy, but I don't revisit them. So I am happy to say, for me personally, as a Paul Thomas Anderson fan, this is his most rewatchable film, I think, to date. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. But I want to talk about him as the writer and director first, going into the attention to detail, and this being like a very much a love letter to the 70s, especially in LA. This seemed like a very personal story of his. This had so much detail to it, not only from a cinematography standpoint, capturing the essence of the 70s, and I love a film that feels like it was shot in the 70s. This is very much so, but also just like knowing all the stuff that was going on. Gas embargoes, certain celebrities and actors and their personas and how they behaved during that time. I just thought that he really captured and encapsulated what it meant to be in the 70s, especially for our two characters. This was very much similar to how I felt about QT with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and how much he embraced the 70s and kind of how the 70s were a character within itself. The same could be said about PTA in this film. And like I said, for me personally, seeing majority of like 90% of his films, this film is a film I will be revisiting, and I can't wait to go back into this world, especially transitioning to, I think, what will be the most talked about aspect of this movie, the two main characters led by Alana Haim, as well as Cooper Hoffman, who is the son of the late, great Philip Seymour Hoffman. I always love when directors work with, kids of actors they worked with in the past. I think of Denzel and Spike Lee and many other examples. But I want to start off with Alana Haim, who plays Alana in this film. Kind of in her mid-20s. She's a photographer assistant. Doesn't really have much structure or much of a path of her life until she meets Gary Valentine. But focusing on Alana here, who this is my first time seeing her. I believe she makes music. She's been in a couple docs, but this is like her first debut film. And she was great. Alana Haim, or I should say Alana Kane in this film, a character that we've probably all have been in this spot in life where we are either in our early 20s, late 20s, and we're just kind of moving through life without much structure, moving through life kind of hoping that something falls in our lap, and something happens to Alana in this film in meeting Gary Valentine, who is a young entrepreneur, young child actor that kind of opens up a lot of doors for her, but it's not until Alana kind of opens those doors for herself and kind of develops who she is as a woman. Like I mentioned, this is a coming-of-age story for both of our characters. They're both coming to their own as people, but they have the other person that kind of helps them and guides them to get to where they need to be in life. But Alana Haim, again, I just loved her personality. I love the jokes. I love just kind of the dryness of her character. This comedy kind of reminded me a little bit, not to the like the over-the-topness of Superbad, but kind of had the Superbad type of moment. She kind of reminded me of Seth in this film, just kind of, again, the dry nature of her character and kind of what she brought to the table. But I really enjoyed her performance, but also her co-lead, who I mentioned is Cooper Hoffman, who plays Gary Valentine, a 15, 16-year-old young actor who's in plays, who's on commercials, who's also a business owner. What a showman in this movie. Again, this is his debut on film. Again, coming from the legacy of his father. This was you couldn't tell me this was his first film because it was just such a natural instinct for him to just demand your attention. Again, he plays this 15-year-old who has walked through life pretty far in regards to seeing the Hollywood landscape, meeting, being somewhat of an adult, which I think was kind of maybe the gravitational pull that Alana had to him, because he's 15, but you wouldn't think he was a 15-year-old because, like I said, he has his own businesses, he's making moves. But again, Gary Valentine, he puts on this front that he kind of knows more beyond his years, but he is a vulnerable character who does still want to be a kid at points in this film. So it was so great to kind of see Cooper balance that, kind of being beyond his years, but at the same time being kind of a inappropriate kind of kid who has his own egos and has his own goals in mind. So I really enjoyed them as individual characters, but in particularly seeing them on screen together, some of the best chemistry I've seen all year. And again, these are two new up-and-coming actors who you would have thought that they've been acting for years. So I really enjoyed their chemistry, their banter, their back and forth, how it was very one-sided, romantically speaking, on Gary's part, and how things kind of unfold as the story goes on, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But as two performers, I thought they were great. They're separate stories, but in particular when they're on screen together is some of the best chemistry I've seen all year. I do want to highlight a little bit some of these cameos that we get in the film, whether it be from Sean Penn or Tom Waits or my personal favorite, Bradley Cooper. I will warn you all, from the advertisement, you might think Bradley Cooper's in the film a little bit longer than what he is, but he only has like a handful of scenes, but they are really great scenes. He is the best cameo in the film as he plays John Peters, the film producer and also the boyfriend of Barbara Streisand. And when you see the film, you know what I'm talking about there. But I thought Bradley Cooper's inclusion in the film, which was much later in the film than I expected, was some of the best. And just on and on, I think of Benny Safdie as Joel, the politician running for office. Again, all the cameos fit so perfectly in the world and just added texture, just added more layers to these characters for our characters to interact with. And it's just this, and just kind of jumping into the narrative and some of the things I really enjoyed about the film, besides the beautiful cinematography, the soundtrack, which was a character, the 70s, which was a character. But I love kind of how I'm a fan of just like everyday life and just kind of going around, just seeing people just live their everyday life and what kind of absurdity they get into. The structure in the story is a little bit weird, which we'll talk about later, but I did enjoy just seeing our main characters interacting with politicians, actors, getting involved in, water bids and all the different businesses that Gary has. So I really did kind of enjoy just what are they going to get into next. It was just such a joy to kind of discover this film as it went on, which brings me into, I want to transition to my criticism. Now, before I jump into things that really didn't sit well with me in the film, I will mention, I personally think, and I've actually seen some of the discourse online so far with the limited release, this film will be divisive in some more points in regards to just the narrative and maybe some of the pacing, but I think there are some things that did kind of rub me the wrong way. A particular stereotypical joke that kind of played into the 70s, which involves a businessman dating different Asian women and not being able to speak their language and making fun of the Asian culture, which again, some people might just say, it's PTA playing into that time, but just because it was something that was normal back then doesn't make it right, which brings me to probably one of the most controversial things in this film that I will be honest with you all, it did kind of bother me as the film went on. Now, I mentioned that Gary Valentine is a 15-year-old in high school, and he meets Alana, who's, like I said, probably 25, 28 years old. 15-year-old, listen, I've been there. I've been a 15-year-old, and I've had my fair share of crushes on older women, but, I never pursued those, right? It's inappropriate, right? It's also, not, lawly speaking, the best thing to do, right? As far as an older person dating a younger person and being involved with them. This film, as it kind of presents it as, again, very one-sided. Gary has very much his own type of infatuation with the Alana character, but she just kind of plays it off as a friend. But as the film kind of unfolds, that one-sided relationship becomes more of a two-way street. And I just got to say, for my personal taste, it did make me a bit uncomfortable. Again, I know it's a movie. I know it's very common back in the day for younger people and older people to be dating. But just because it's very common, like I said, about the racial slurs and kind of the stereotypical jokes that were kind of unnecessary in the film, it just doesn't make it right, from my opinion. And I want to see from the Twitter sphere and the film community that same energy that people had for a film that came out earlier this year with Malcolm and Marie, with John David Washington and Zendaya, and the age difference there, and how people were all up in arms about that. I want to see if that same energy is applied for that film. So I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of very uncomfortable about the idea of this older, younger relationship and how it kind of played out on screen. So I'll just kind of leave it at that and leave it for you guys to kind of discuss in the comments, but kind of dive into some things that I did think weren't the best fleshed out in the film. I will say, this film is about 2 hours and 15 minutes, and there, again, I love the chemistry of our two leads, but there were a lot of moments that I feel like we were just watching like these little highlight reels. It was almost like a music video at times, which again, stylistic choice that PTA went with. A lot of it worked, but some of it just felt a little off and felt like it was unnecessary at points. So there are moments where I just feel like that wasn't really necessary and kind of slowed down the pacing and the frenetic energy that we were getting from the most of the movie. And then the other thing that kind of bothered me, I love the Gary character and kind of his businesses and what he got himself into, and Alana kind of tagging along until she kind of finds her own. But whenever they weren't on screen together, I feel like that was kind of the weaker parts of the film, which is mostly kind of highlighted in the back half of the second half and into the third act, where they're pretty much separated until closer to the end of the film. So whenever they weren't on screen together, I feel like the energy in the film wasn't as high as it was when they shared the screen together. So that's kind of my criticism. Before I give you all my overall thoughts and let you know if it's worth checking out, if you haven't already, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Overall, Licorice Pizza is definitely a love letter to the 70s by PTA, which I think this is one of his most funniest films, as well as the films that have a lot of heart, a lot of great chemistry between our two leads. Like I said, if I were to compare this to some previous work of his, this reminded me a little bit of Boogie Nights meets kind of Punk Drunk Love with a little bit of sprinkle of, Superbad mixed in with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. With all that being said, even with my criticisms and that divisive nature that I talked about, I really enjoyed this film and I recommend you all give it a shot. With that being said, I'm going to give Licorice Pizza a 4 out of 5. And like I said, when it comes available on December 25th, I recommend you all give it a watch. And when you do, let me know your pros, your cons, your favorite moments, your least favorite moments, how you feel about some of those moments I brought up in this review. Let's talk about it all in the comments below. And for me personally, as far as my favorite PTA film, this is kind of high up there, but my favorite film is Boogie Nights. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you stuck around to this point in the review, I appreciate you all. Before you leave, make sure to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss any of my future reviews. Hope you enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe. As you all can see on the screen now, subscribe to my channel. Check out my other content. We'll catch you in the next video.